1. This happened a few hours ago, and it still hurts. My wife and I laugh about my stupid stuff, though some are really bad at the time. While my wife plowed through a bottle of Castello di Poggio Moscato 45 minutes after a bad day of work, I cleaned up dinner. Our human spawn had asked why I liked the Broncos. My wife teased, saying it was dumb, since I've never been to Denver. We live multiple states away. I told her I actually had. I even admitted to sending flowers to a girl in Denver. A Denverite, if you will. "Wait, what?" she exclaimed. "You never told me this. Spill, now!" If I didn't, this sass would increase exponentially, so I did. Years before I met my spouse, I had a business conference in downtown Denver. On the last night, our group leader invited us to dinner at a Texas Roadhouse in Aurora. I think. They had local friends who joined us. Our server was super cute. Now, our group leader is a wonderful, friendly guy from Texas that reminds you of Andy Griffith. Sadly, he noticed how I was eyeing her a bit. He felt compelled to point out I was the only single man at the table of 7. He'd say things like, "You're going for marine biology. Well, Jebba State doesn't have a coastline, but I'm sure they have some zoo aquariums you could study at." His wife actually cut in saying, "I'm sure you have plenty of family members trying to set you up with young men all the time." She laughed nervously and said it was always very embarrassing when they did. He still didn't get the hint, so on it went. Dinner ended, as it does, with my cheeks redder than normal. I apologized near my signature on the credit card slip, right under my hefty tip. A few weeks later, we talked on the phone. His wife mentioned their friends had the same server that past night. She remembered them. As a server, I knew it was probably because she hated us. Everyone lights up a room, some when they arrive, others when they leave. Surprisingly, she remembered that really cute guy your friend tried to set me up with. My friend is the one who suggested flowers. I'm not so bold. After getting some gumption, I learned when she worked, and ordered flowers from a local shop to deliver. I added my name and number to the note. Now, I didn't mean to find out her schedule. Calling a restaurant manager and lying that your wife didn't leave a tip is bad enough. I just figured he'd say, "Yes, she's still employed here." Yet he grabbed the schedule and told me exactly when her next shift was. People don't ever give out employee schedules. The flowers were delivered before her shift. Of course, she didn't call or text. Being older and more wise, I know what I did was weird and super creepy. I ended the story explaining, I will never order flowers online again, because $60 is way too much for flowers. $60? I almost dropped the dish I was washing. "You paid $60 to send flowers to a girl in another state that you met once." She didn't let up. "Where's my $60 flowers, Jabba?" "I only get the $5 just because bouquets from Hy-Vee." No, I stopped her. "Trader Joe's." "I'm not kidding, I said this." "Same difference." "But no," I argued. "Better quality, and you get so much more. Besides, if I bought you $60 worth of flowers from Trader Joe's, they wouldn't have any left." "And?" Now I take everything literally. I have a hard time reading between the lines. My wife loves this because she can give me a hard time about anything. In these moments, I think she's ticked off at me. As a result, I try to defend myself and explain my reasoning. This time, though, we both saw the humor in the situation. However, I hadn't realized I already dug a hole to the Earth's core. Besides, the arrangements I craft for you with Trader Joe's flowers are more magnificent than anything you could order online or have someone else arrange. I don't exaggerate, they are amazing. $20 at Trader Joe's and I'll make 2 massive vases look like $200. When I make them for you, I continued, I spend at least 20 minutes on them. With that, I realized my shovel had broken through in Thailand. When I looked at the table, her face was a mixture of confusion, annoyance, and a struggle to keep a straight face. "You know, I'm going to put away this shovel that I've been using and stop talking." "Good idea," she agreed. "While you're at it, maybe think about the time we stopped at Starbucks and you didn't get me anything." "Oh, he must know what I want. Aw, so sweet. Nope, just himself." "Or the time you ate my breakfast after I spent all night pushing your kid out. Or when you left me alone and starving at the hospital to have lunch with your family and didn't bring me anything." I raised a white flag in surrender. Her birthday is next month, followed by V-Day. I better save up. 2. About 6 years ago, I was a trainee for a small local electrical company. One of our clients was a local waterworks. They decided to tear down older parts of the city, and our job was to install new power connections to their newly built pump house. I'm speaking massive power cables where one conductor had the diameter of my lower arm and about 150 to 200 meters in length, if I remember correctly. And we had to install 50 of them. The cable reels in which these things arrived were about my size, 1.7 meters. I probably do not need to mention that a lot of copper was stolen from that site, especially by my colleagues. We had a tight schedule, so work had to be done quick. However, one weekend only one colleague was there and doing some minor work after we already did most of the installation. As I wanted to earn a buck or two extra, I volunteered to help him. We arrive on the site and start doing some work as he notices that he had to first check on something with one of the managers. So he left me alone in the newly constructed room with all the new super fancy power supplies that were about 2 meters tall each. Nowadays, I would happily accept a short break to have a smoke or something, but since I didn't smoke back then and hadn't heard of Reddit at the time, I got bored quickly and started to look around at all this interesting tech stuff I knew basically nothing about. For the nerds, there were capacitors the size of my arm, and there were many. You should have seen the fuses. I was fascinated. Since the old power room was about to be torn down and the new one was not ready yet, the engineers of the site made a crude switchboard on a large piece of plywood, where they had basic access over the functionality of the whole waterworks, until our systems were ready. So far so good, I'd say. Enter stupid me, discovering the switchboard. Oh look, more fascinating stuff that I didn't know shit about. My view glanced a bit above the surface of the panel where I noticed a lamp test. For those who don't know, a lamp test is basically just a relay that illuminates every light on the board, so the operator can make sure that every warning light actually works. I pressed the button. Nothing happens. I was curious and pressed the button again, but deeper. And the exact moment that I pressed the button the second time, I hear every pump in the huge hall next to me suddenly shut down. You have to know a waterworks is quite noisy, and within 20 seconds or so there was dead silence. I absolutely froze in panic, having no idea what to do. Out of panic, I pressed the lamp test again, hoping this would somehow magically restart the machines. This time, finally, all the light bulbs come on, but as you may imagine, I wasn't fascinated by that anymore. And as if this wouldn't be enough, a fucking deafening siren started roaring through the silence, now letting everyone in the area know that something was massively wrong. I, even though probably completely pale and covered with sweat, decided to play dumb, but to still seek some help. As if I was to casually walk by the pumps when I noticed them shutting down, and now I was asking why, just out of curiosity. So I walked downstairs across the yard and into the office building next door, where I assumed my colleague was. The first thing I saw was the room of the pump operator, and through his open door, I could see that every one of his 6 screens he used to monitor the pumps was just spilling out warnings and errors, and there was flashing red everywhere. I tried to look shocked while I actually was fucking dying inside, but gathered the courage to casually stop by the doorframe to say something like, "Oh Lord, this doesn't look good. What is happening?" I should have gotten an Oscar for this or something. Then my colleague showed up, also very irritated by everything that's going on. I thought that was it, that after only 1 year of me being in this company, they'd kick me out or throw me in prison or whatever was a suitable punishment for leaving an entire time without water for at least 2 hours. I didn't even care at this moment that in no imaginable reality could it make sense that a fucking lamp test button would shut down the entire waterworks. But that's what my stupid 16-year-old self was thinking. So I was standing there, nearly fainting out of panic, all while trying to act as normal as I could, as the engineer who monitored the pumps also had no clue what the hell happened. Quick forward a little bit. They never really found out what was causing the whole facility to shut down, but the engineer strongly assumed it had something to do with the power grid that was feeding the waterworks. Apparently it was not uncommon for the grid operator to just shut down the grid whenever they want to do some maintenance work without notifying the site because the owner of the waterworks would strongly protest shutting down the site. I guess it was easier for the operator to just do it without anyone knowing. That way no one could complain. I felt like I was reborn after hearing this, almost crying because of the relief. Went home later that day to tell basically everyone how stupid I was, and I had many good laughs. In fact, I still do to this day. 3. I've studied Japanese for like 15 years. Luckily enough to have classes available in JHS and HS, and then majored in it in university, and I've lived and worked here for over 5 years. While I'd been studying Japanese for a while before coming here for my job, I'd never lived in Japan before, and obviously there was a big learning curve when I first moved. Especially with the little things that you don't learn in a classroom. Aside from studying Japanese, my other hobbies include cooking and baking, which often requires flour. In the US, I'd just use all-purpose flour, but of course that's not what it's called in Japan. They categorize and label flours differently here. So, when going to the grocery store for the first time, do you think I looked at the shelf of assorted flours with various unfamiliar kanji and words and thought, maybe I should whip out my phone, with its infinite sources of information including Google, Google Translate, and English to Japan dictionary app, and figure out just what the fuck these types of flours are before I try buying some? Nope. I looked at the package art that conveniently includes pictures of what sorts of cooking it could be used in, and discerned that, oh, this one has pictures of bread on it. Must be bread flour. Don't need that. Oh, this one has tempura, cake, and noodles on it. That's quite a random assortment. Must be all-purpose considering all the various purposes it seems to be used for. And immediately bought the bag with what I perceived to be the most all-purpose of 3 or 4 varieties I saw before me. Ever since that day, for over 5 years, I've bought the same kind without a thought about the actual words on the package, always going off of the art on it instead. The thing is, sometimes when I've made baked goods, they would come out too soft. Something would always be a little off with my brownies or cookies, and they'd fall apart just slightly too easily. I've been wanting to get into pizza making and bread making. The handful of times I've tried making bread from recipes that use AP flour, it just never turned out right. The dough never held together quite enough no matter how much or how little I kneaded it, and the texture was always wrong. Recently I started following the pizza subreddit, and have just been really inspired to try making my own pizza. Especially since there's no delivery or decent pizza shops in my area. I bought a silicone baking mat. That would make kneading a much easier task than on my shitty unsealed wooden table. So the other night, instead of my usual easy, no-knead same-night pizza dough recipe, I decided to try a small-scale version of Ken Forkish's one-day overnight pizza dough. Long story short, the pizza was still tasty, but the dough was so soft that it stretched too thin and tore easily and felt like it hadn't developed any gluten at all, despite 24 hours of rise and rest. It tastes fine, but what the hell is wrong with my dough? Is my house too cold? Did I knead it wrong? Are my measurements fucked? Why is it falling apart so easily? It was plaguing my thoughts so much that I woke up still thinking about it when my alarm went off this morning. So I did what I should have done 5 years ago and googled what types of flour are available in Japan and found the answer immediately, in English. I found out the 3 main types. There's hakurikiko, which literally means weak power flour. Why is it called that? Because of the 3 types, it has the lowest amount of gluten, hence why it's used for cakes and tempura batter, where you don't need much gluten. It's usually translated to cake or pastry flour. Then there's chorikiko, aka medium power flour, which is the mid-tier of gluten percentage, and according to the blog I found, is the equivalent to all-purpose flour. Last is the highest one, yorikiko, strong power flour, being the bread flour that I'd recognize because it had pictures of bread on it. I double-checked the bag of what I thought was all-purpose, and sure enough, it was the weak cake flour. That's why my donuts had always been too soft, that's why my cookies came out not chewy enough, and that's why my breads never turned out well. 5 years I thought I was bad at kneading or something, but turns out I just needed to open Google for 5 seconds. I did buy a bag of the medium flour after work and have a batch of pizza dough resting to cook tomorrow, so here's hoping I can make better baked goods from now on. Also, when I did make the pizza, it was so much better than cake flour pizza. 4. As I was driving home, I had a mildly serious discussion with myself about the pros and cons of taking an evening ride on my road bicycle. I got into a silently heated argument where my fitness regime angel was screaming, "You've got this! Get the miles in and you will thank yourself in the morning!" While my ice cream-loving demon retorted, "Don't listen to that, idiot. You've got chocolate chip cookie dough and brownie chunk paradise packaged nicely in the freezer waiting to meet your tongue." My fitness side won out, mostly because I know I'd slacked on it this week and guilted myself into it, and partly because I do like ice cream, but taking sweets in pretty limited quantities is part of a meal plan calorie deficit, and wasn't really feeling it. So with a smirk and my newfound resolve to resist temptation, I was all set to grind out gears on an epic ride when I turned the key in the door. That's when it hit me. First, the heat. I don't know what gremlin possessed my thermostat, but when I walked in, I swear my soul began to melt from the fires of Hades. The thing had fired off up to 95 degrees. Had to have been on all day, and I was at work for a good 16 hours. It was a sauna. And I could have sworn I could see a cloud of steam purge itself from amidst the darkness as the door cracked. Then, the smell hit me. It was like someone had taken a cinder block made of rotten flesh and shoved it into my chest. My air escaped me as I gasped, only to horrifically return into my lungs after gagging to an enterprising smell of God knows what. They had been working on plumbing in this building, and at first I thought perhaps something had flooded from the pipes, which actually happened recently on the 6th and 12th floors of the building. I immediately grew concerned and started searching the floor like a crazy lunatic for some sort of putrid mass of water raging from places unknown, scouring every room that had a water fixture in it. When none could be found, to my befuddlement, I turned to my kitchen, which now seemed to be emanating noxious clues to my nose in order to chase the origin of the scent, which my newly formed heightened sense of smell enabled me to track down, amidst gagging. Ugh. The intense heat emanating from the HVAC system had seemingly overpowered the confined spaces of the trash can, which had little inside, but scraps of leftovers from the meal the night before, and that had vigorously liquefied whatever was inside it into a frothy mixture of bleh. My stomach once again fought me as I opened the can, and squinted through the involuntary tears forming at the murder scene my eyes came upon. As the adrenaline hit in sheer panic, I commenced to execute a half-cocked barrel roll away from the can towards a kitchen island that didn't quite have the nuance or smoothness of Jason Bourne. I grabbed a bag from under the sink of the finest hefty flex-lock material money could buy, two, in fact, and using some sort of ancient Tai Chi method of stretching, secured the can liner from its unholy coffin of agony, and threw it into the two bags using a knot that would make a sailor blush with envy. And with that, venturing out into the hallway with the haste of Usain Bolt, I began to launch myself down the L corner before realizing that the speed of my departure might indeed raise suspicions from the staff and residents alike. I had to be real cool about this, so I slowed and began fast walking, if at a fit senior citizen's pace, to the trash chute. Eyes down, not staring anyone in the eye, though I could see in my periphery the concierge eyeing me as the smell trailed clearly. It wasn't working. It was a walking experience commensurate with that which guys and gals would donate as the walk of shame after that embarrassing one-night stand with the ugly cohort that sure seemed more attractive the evening before. I had finally reached the trash chute home, opened the door, and threw it with the fury of Zeus into the compactor, never to be heard from again. Or so I thought. The stench had permeated the corridors and lingered with a pungent aroma that couldn't be shaken. After I nonchalantly ventured back into my home, again avoiding eye contact with passers-by, who likely still smelled the decay in the hallways, or perhaps worse, soaked into my clothing, I got back into the apartment. And there, in the most pitiful of states, I have covered every surface with more cleanser and Febreze within the last half hour than I think is legally authorized outside of a manufacturing plant of said chemicals. I even changed the filters since it had soaked up the stench, began washing cloth and linen items with an egregious amount of detergent, hoping to neutralize the smells. And I'm undecided on if I need to douse the walls with a power sprayer to alleviate any residual smells. For now, I sit here, hoping my HVAC system return forgives me, while polishing off the very last of this ice cream. 5. I used to work for Safeway. For those who may not know, it is a massive supermarket and grocery chain on the US West Coast. Being in Northern California, we have a robust and amazing Mexican population. Great people, the lot. Also, being in California, it can get pretty hot in the 104 to 108 Fahrenheit range at the peak of summer. Now, I am a mayonnaise white ranch dipping polo wearing cracker. I had this one Mexican co-worker named Jesus, great dude, funny, obsessed with women, and loved to fuck with me, but not all the time, usually just cool. I was lower management and had a lot of Spanish-speaking customers and a lot of Spanish-speaking staff. I wanted to learn some Spanish, and was picking up job-related terms here and there, bolsa, ayuda, llaves, and such. It allowed me to try to converse with my customers and staff better and learn along the way. Everybody wins. So this one extremely hot day, I asked Jesus how to say I was really hot to customers. Bullshit weather talk, good stuff. Jesus tells me, "Oh, you say, yo soy muy caliente." So okay, we're at work, I took him at his word and used it all day with my Spanish-speaking customers. So people are acting pretty weird as we're coming through my line for much of the day. And eventually, this woman comes through, and like so many before her, I say, "Hola, su tarjeta, ¿cómo está? Can I have your club card? How are you?" She says, "Bien, ¿y tú?" "Good, and you?" Now, this is the 100th or so customer I had this conversation that day. But this woman, this angel of a woman, I say, "Yo soy muy caliente," while sort of pulling my collar and fanning my face with my hand. She starts laughing so hard that she almost can't talk, and she asks me in English, "Do you know what that means?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it means I'm really hot," as I'm handing her her receipt. She leans in real close, grabs her receipt and whispers, "It means I'm very horny." Then grabs her bag and walks off. I turn bright red. Then turn around and Jesus is in the check stand behind me laughing his ass off, crying tears leaning on his register. Turns out he had been sitting there all day, having the time of his goddamn life, watching me tell all of our customers how horny I was. I gave up in my Spanish. Freeze everyone, hell hair here, things and stuff, and badgers and whatnot, and I'm the mayor of all Londinium. Where are we? Okay. Let's see. Oh yes, thank you very much for listening to Embarrassing Stories, episode 92. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then things and stuff, you know how it goes. I do appreciate it. It's very, very helpful. Right, this is Thursday, isn't it? Yes, it is. I'm hoping to do a stream at the weekend. Not a promise, it is a hope. We'll see how it goes. I'm not 100% better, but I'm much better than I was. So we'll see how it goes. As for today, I'm going to wrap up this video, get some groceries ordered. Well, I've got them ordered. They should hopefully be here between 3 and 5. And I need to top up my heating because either the heating's broke, which for once I don't think it is. I think it actually just ran out, which never happens to me. I've always usually got about, but by the time I top it up, I've usually got like a couple of weeks of heat left anyway, even if I didn't bother. But I've had it on a lot more recently because, it's been very chilly. So that needs to be topped up. Just a few errands to run. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.